Before we get into this story, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Your support helps me share more real-life emotional stories like this. When Daniel first brought it up, I laughed. Not a light laugh, but one threaded with ridicule. Really? I said, shaking my head. You're jealous of Ethan. He's my best friend. We've known each other since college. You're being ridiculous. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't push. He just nodded slowly, falling into a silence that made me realize my words had landed deeper than I thought. I could see the hurt in his eyes, like I'd just punched him in the gut without even trying. But I brushed it off. Later that night, I called my sister and vented. Daniel's overreacting, I told her. He thinks Ethan is some kind of threat. It's so childish. She agreed right away, laughing along with me. And just like that, I felt justified in dismissing his concerns. After all, Ethan had been there for me through everything. Every breakup, every bad job interview, every late-night crisis. He was my rock long before Daniel came into the picture. Even when Daniel and I first started dating, Ethan was the one person I could talk to freely, without any fear of judgment. He got me in a way no one else did. But what I didn't see, or maybe didn't want to see, was how it all looked from the outside. Ethan texted me constantly, day and night. Funny memes, deep thoughts, little updates about his life. And I always replied immediately, no matter what. Sometimes, it happened right in the middle of dinner with Daniel. I'd pull out my phone, read Ethan's message, and burst out laughing at one of his jokes. Daniel would sit there, watching me with this quiet look on his face, like he was fading into the background. There were inside jokes between Ethan and me that Daniel could never understand. Hugs that lingered just a second too long when we met up. Conversations that would suddenly pause or shift whenever Daniel walked into the room. I told myself it was all harmless. Just friendship. Pure and simple. But deep down, in that quiet place I didn't like to visit, I knew it wasn't as innocent as I pretended. There was a spark there, a comfort that felt a little too warm, a little too close. Weeks passed, and Daniel tried again one night after we'd finished watching a movie. We were sitting on the couch, the credits rolling, and he turned to me with this serious expression. Sophie, he said softly, I need you to understand what this feels like. It's as if you're giving parts of yourself to Ethan that should belong to us, to me. His voice was steady, but I could hear the pain underneath. I rolled my eyes, feeling irritated. You're overreacting, I snapped back. He's just a friend. Stop trying to control who I talk to. I crossed my arms, waiting for him to back down like he always did. But something in Daniel shifted right then. I saw it in his eyes, a quiet resolve, like he'd just made a decision without saying a word. But I was too caught up in feeling superior, too wrapped up in my own defensiveness, to notice. I thought I'd won the argument. In reality, the game was just beginning, and I didn't even know the rules. Over the next month, Daniel changed. Not in big, dramatic bursts that would have set off alarms, but in subtle, unsettling ways that crept up on me slowly. He stopped asking where I was going when I mentioned meeting up with Ethan. No more questions about what time I'd be home or what we'd be doing. He no longer stayed up late, waiting for me with a cup of tea or a concerned look. The man who used to notice every little detail, like if I'd had a bad day at work or if my favorite show was on, now seemed distant, detached, like he was living in his own world. At first, I convinced myself it was progress. Finally, he'd stopped obsessing over nothing. He was giving me space, trusting me like an adult. But what I felt wasn't relief. It was an eerie emptiness, like the house had lost its warmth. His silence weighed heavier than any argument we'd ever had. It hung in the air, thick and unspoken, making every room feel colder. Meanwhile, Ethan was still there, just like always. Texting me funny stories from his day, calling to check in, inviting me out for coffee or drinks. And I leaned into it almost spitefully. If Daniel didn't care anymore, fine. I'd show him I didn't need his approval. I laughed louder at Ethan's jokes, stayed out later than usual, shared more secrets that I probably should have kept between my husband and me. It felt like rebellion, like I was proving a point. But the more I leaned into that friendship, the colder my home became. Dinners with Daniel turned into wordless meals, where we'd eat in silence, staring at our plates. Nights ended with him silently rolling away in bed, his back to me like a wall I couldn't climb. I started to feel a gnawing ache in my chest, but I pushed it down, telling myself it would pass. Then one Friday, everything shattered. I came home from a night out with Ethan. We'd gone to our favorite bar, laughing about old college stories until closing time. The house was dark when I walked in, but there was a light on in the living room. And there was Daniel, sitting on the couch with a suitcase beside him. My heart sank straight to my stomach. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice cracking despite my attempt to stay calm. He looked up at me, not with anger, not with tears, but with something far worse, indifference. Like I was a stranger he'd already said goodbye to. "I can't do this anymore, Sophie," he said evenly, his tone flat and final. "I warned you. I told you how it made me feel, and you mocked me. I won't beg for respect in my own marriage." I froze, the room spinning around me. "Wait, you're leaving me over Ethan? Are you serious?" My words tumbled out, desperate and jumbled. I could feel panic rising in my throat, choking me. Daniel took a deep breath, standing up slowly. "It's not about Ethan," he replied. "It's about you. You chose to make me the outsider in my own marriage, and I'm done." It felt like the floor dropped out beneath me. I had always believed Daniel would never leave. That no matter how far I pushed, no matter how many times I dismissed him, he'd stay because he loved me that much. But standing there with his suitcase, he looked like a man who had already left me long ago, mentally, emotionally, completely. I stumbled toward him, panic fully taking over. "Daniel, please don't do this. Ethan is just a friend. I was wrong to mock you. I didn't mean it." My voice cracked, tears streaming down my face now. The confidence I once had, that smug superiority, was stripped away, leaving me raw and exposed. But Daniel only shook his head, his expression unchanging. "You don't get it, Sophie. You didn't just mock me. You dismissed me. You dismissed my feelings like they were nothing. You laughed while I was drowning in doubt and hurt." His words hit me like stones, heavy and undeniable. For the first time I saw myself through his eyes, the real me, not the version I told myself. The dinners where I ignored his questions to check my phone. The nights I brushed off his concerns with a wave of my hand. The moments I chose Ethan's validation over my husband's trust. Suddenly, it wasn't about jealousy or insecurity anymore. It was betrayal. Not the physical kind, but emotional, deep and cutting, like a slow poison that had been building for years. I reached for his hand, desperate to hold on. "We can fix this. Please, I'll stop seeing Ethan. I'll cut him out completely. I'll do anything you want. Just stay." Daniel gently pulled away, like someone who had already made peace with his decision. "I gave you years, Sophie," he said softly, his voice almost kind in its finality. "I begged you to see me, to really see what this was doing to us. But you never did. You only saw a jealous husband to mock, someone to roll your eyes at. Now, I see myself, and I know I deserve better. I deserve someone who chooses me first, every time." With that, he picked up the suitcase and walked toward the door. I followed him, begging, my words a blur of apologies and promises. But he didn't stop. The door clicked shut behind him, and the silence that followed was suffocating, like all the air had been sucked out of the house. I sank onto the couch, my body shaking with sobs. Replaying every cruel laugh, every sarcastic jab I'd thrown his way. Every time I made him feel small instead of safe, unimportant instead of cherished. Ethan's text lit up my phone, a silly emoji or something meaningless, but for the first time I didn't care. His attention meant nothing compared to what I had lost. It was empty, hollow, a poor substitute for the real love I'd thrown away. That night, I lay awake in our empty bed, the sheets cold without him. I realized too late that the man I dismissed as jealous was actually the only one who had truly loved me. He'd loved me enough to fight for us, to voice his pain, to give me chances I didn't deserve. And I'd repaid him with mockery, with emotional infidelity that chipped away at our foundation until it crumbled. The friendship with Ethan wasn't worth it, it never had been. It was a distraction, a way to feel wanted without the hard work of a real marriage. Now, I was alone, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever find someone who loved me like Daniel did. But deep down, I knew the truth, I didn't deserve it. Not after what I'd done. In the days that followed, the house felt like a tomb. I called Daniel's phone over and over, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful pleas to angry rants. But he didn't answer. My sister tried to console me, saying maybe it was for the best, but her words rang hollow. Ethan reached out too, concerned about my sudden silence, but I ignored him. Seeing his name on my screen only filled me with regret. How had I let it go this far? How had I convinced myself that constant texts and late nights were just innocent fun? It was emotional cheating, plain and simple, giving my heart's attention to someone else while starving my marriage. I started therapy a week later, desperate to understand myself. The counselor listened as I poured out the story, and she nodded knowingly. Emotional infidelity, she said, is just as damaging as the physical kind. It's about boundaries, trust, and respect. You'd crossed them all without realizing, or maybe without caring. Her words stung, but they were true. I'd prioritized Ethan's ego boosts over Daniel's needs. I'd laughed at his vulnerability instead of honoring it, and now, the consequences were staring me in the face: divorce papers in the mail, an empty closet where his clothes used to hang, friends awkwardly choosing sides. Months dragged on, and I tried to rebuild. I cut Ethan out completely, blocking his number and avoiding our old haunts. It hurt at first, he'd been a constant in my life for so long, but it was necessary. I focused on work, on hobbies I'd neglected, on figuring out who I was without leaning on someone else for validation. Daniel moved on too, or at least that's what mutual friends whispered. He was dating someone new, someone who made him laugh again, who saw him for the incredible man he was. Looking back, I wish I could shake my past self, tell her to listen, to choose her husband over fleeting thrills. But regrets don't change anything. They just teach hard lessons. If you're listening to this and it sounds familiar, don't wait until it's too late. Respect your partner's feelings. Draw those boundaries. Because emotional infidelity isn't just a harmless flirtation, it's a thief that steals your future, one dismissed concern at a time. And that's the story. If it touched you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thanks for listening.